Hi, everybody. Welcome to the making of Dead and Buried, the almost postmortem, because we're not actually quite done with the game, so the pre-postmortem, something like that. I don't know. I want to thank you for being here. It's been really exciting to talk about the game, kind of the early concepts all the way through the development, and hopefully the demo that you guys have seen today out on the show floor. I want to really quickly introduce our panelists. We have Rutherford, Andrew Welch, Jeff Matsuda, and Pärtel Lang here to talk about the game. And we're going to jump right into questions. So Andrew and Ryan, you guys kind of came up with the core concept. Take us kind of through the original idea. It started as a prototype. What were the goals behind it, and how did it evolve from there?
Sure. I'll start with, is this on? We good?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so early on, this game started as, and some of you may have actually heard this story before, but it actually started as a Gear VR title. And it was basically what we wanted to do. We were coming off finishing the Hero-bound First Steps, and Andrew and I were kind of moving on to what we were going to do next, and we started prototyping a bunch of games and everything like that, and we're having some conversations with Jason Rubin, and he said, what about a 1-versus-1 quick draw in the Wild West? And I'm like, that sounds kind of cool. Like, yeah, we'll prototype that. And we started doing that, and he said, you know, maybe we could fill it with a lot of interesting, cool characters. I know a guy, his name's Jeff, we'll talk about that later. Really cool characters, and I always sort of equated it into like a fighting game. You know, you would kind of pick your character, they'd have different abilities, different stats, different weapons. And then we prototyped in about a week or so, maybe 2 weeks, and we found out the game was kind of, there wasn't a whole lot there, honestly. We didn't have much gameplay to kind of pull from, because basically you're standing in one spot, and the control scheme was basically you look up, look at the other player, and you tap the headset and fire away. And the goal really was to create a simple mobile title that our small team could handle. And it was just basically Andrew and I doing design and art and engineering, and we had a character artist who was a contractor, and then we had Jeff doing characters. So early on, it was a very simple game, but we did struggle with trying to find like what this game should be, what it could be, and I don't know if you guys have anything else to mention.
Yeah, it was basically a turret shooter, and
Yeah.
we didn't want to do that. We
Right.
prototyped some other ones, and so we had to find something that would make it very unique.
When did you guys kind of make that turn to the 2v2 shooter we know today?
That's when it definitely got more exciting. So we started working on like making it cross-platform with the Rift, and that added in, you know, a lot of new possibilities gameplay-wise. You know, we have positional tracking, so we can kind of, you know, dodge, we can duck. We actually had a concept, you may be able to see a little bit in that video that keeps looping, but basically the bullets would come to you, and we experimented with like slowdown. Like
Yeah, they'd go into almost like a bullet time so that you could dodge. And
it kind of made it, you know, a little bit more unique, but also we were still trying to make like a cross-platform game. So we're still kind of held back by the lack of positional on mobile. So it wasn't until Jason came to us and said, hey, we have these new touch controllers. Do you guys want to try these out? And we're like, well, we're making a shooter more or less, and it seems to make a lot of sense being able to hold the guns in your hand and kind of aim. And once we hooked that up, that was, I think, we're going to hold off on mobile for right now. We're going to just focus on Rift and Touch. After that, we ended up going to, we wanted to bring a demo to OC2 last year, so we ended up making the shooting gallery demo. And we were still working on the quick draw element of the game, but we still had troubles with, you know, IK and third-person avatars. We wanted to have a full system there to work. And now that we have positionally tracked head, and now we have hands, the problem just was even much larger than it was before.
yeah, so we tried the first-person avatar thing, you know, and the neck hole moving around. It was a difficult solution at the time. And, yeah.
So then we just kept iterating on it, and then we showed the OC2 demo, and it was basically a glorified shooting gallery. And then after that, we said, all right, we got to get back to multiplayer, because ultimately we wanted to make a really fun multiplayer title that you could play with others. And so we started. I was working on a new map. It was basically like a saloon level. We had the block out of that, and we just got it up and running to where, you know, you both spawn in one-on-one, and you just shoot each other. And then we just naturally found out that, you know, you would naturally duck behind the bar or cover or hide behind a pillar, and that made for an interesting gameplay. And I think we even experimented with like different like spawns and respawning and that mechanic.
Yeah, we were going to have a progression of the spawn points where you could like move from bad cover to better cover, up the stairs, and you know, to other spawn points that had different weapons and whatnot. But that was all kind of, it took a lot of mental thought to be able to
It also slowed the game down.
It slowed the game
So-
down.
Yeah.
We noticed that you'd spawn in and have these crazy firefights, which is kind of what we were going for originally, and then you would duck down and kind of get a break. You'd reload, get back up, and then you may beat the other person, or they may defeat you. And then we found out just respawning somewhere else just made a lot of sense. It was a lot more fun that way. It kept up the pace, and matches were over in about 5 to 8 minutes, and
Yeah.
you're sweating, your knees hurt, and you realize you're out of shape. And but that was a good realization that I think we had something at that point. Like we did, and then we made it. Well, let's add in 2 more players, and then we added in. We made it 2v2, so it's good guys versus bad guys, and you're hiding behind cover. We added more weapons. You're picking up dynamite and launching it, and other weapons, shotguns and stuff like that, and design weapons to get people out of cover or to.
Yeah, like the one shot was the
Yeah.
result of people hiding behind a barrel or crates or whatever, and you just get that, fire that, lob it over, and then they can't sit there.
Right.
So
But they can still sit behind the bar and
they
lay
can
down.
still sit
They're still
behind the
there.
bar, but there's dynamite that you can throw back.
Okay,
there.
all right.
It takes practice to
Yeah.
lob it back there, but it works.
Okay. Cool. And Jeff, the look and feel of the game is amazing. Tell us kind of where that came from.
Well, I think a lot of it came from conversations with Ryan and Andrew and these guys. Basically, whenever I'm designing, I always start from silhouette. I think shape and silhouette's really important. So every drawing that you see up there, at some point, I'm gonna black it out to get the pure silhouette. And if the silhouette isn't good, I'll mess with it till it is good. I think you can't have a really good model or a really good illustration without a powerful silhouette. So you see there, that's pretty much what happened with like there's not a prop or anything that I didn't have to mess with to make it look just more interesting, having interesting shapes. It was also it became a supernatural Western because we wanted to do a Western, but then we wanted it to be really interesting. We wanted to have ghosts, so we wanted to have a world that would be able to sustain all the weird things that were coming up in our heads through all of our conversations we're having. So if you look at the screen, these guys are weird looking. They have weird hairstyles. We have Cyclops witches, vampire Civil War soldiers. So all those things, we just wanted to have a world that could sustain all that. Then there was also the last thing that we had to do for everything was that it would be fun. Because you could have those first 2 pillars and make a really gory, disgusting looking game. But we wanted it to be really fun. So with every drawing that went through the chain, anything we'd see coming through the pipeline, it would have to reach those 3 criteria to make sure. So fun is really important. If you notice the backgrounds, all the scenes, we sort of wanted it to look like a theme park, like if you're at Disneyland. We didn't want anything that we had to fight in or anything that occurs to be sort of boring. So we always wanted it to be exciting in every aspect.
And yeah, that was an interesting challenge originally because we were like, let's make a Wild West game. And I think in most movies and anything Wild West, it's very cliche. It's a few colors. There's not a whole lot of fun there. And I mean, it's iconic and everything, but we wanted to go beyond that. We didn't want to just make something that was expected or generic. So, and we want to do crazy stuff like this, like a grenade launcher, or what's a railgun like in
the Old West.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
so we have to kind of break out of that. We use the supernatural style to kind of push those boundaries.
Yeah. And I was going to say that, like the weapon concept there, Jeff did a great job. A lot of times you get these crazy weapons and they're like very difficult to implement, but Jeff drew in all the details, all the levers and the pivots for everything, so it was really easy to implement.
Well, basically for me, it was really important that I think that with such a small team, with short timelines, I think every member of the team has to be responsible. So I don't just draw anything that goes in my head and then I'm like, and you guys figure out how it works, because that'll add a lot of time to your schedule. So I was pretty meticulous in the drawings because I wanted to make sure it worked. So it doesn't. If you front load problems, it's a lot better than at the end when people we're trying to get stuff out and then half of it doesn't work.
Yeah, and like the Punisher weapon you saw, which is basically a one-handed shotgun. What made it unique was that. So we don't have like a pump action shotgun in the game, but you would just grab it and stand up and start shooting. The design kind of came from, most people miss on their first shot or 2, so it's got a wide spread of bullets, but also it shoots, you get 2 shots. So that kind of made it unique, and that you could shoot once and miss and maybe kind of realign and get another shot off. So we kind of used the fun and the gameplay to kind of influence the design as well. So yeah, we have a lot of back and forth and stuff like that, and it's kind of cool to come up with that stuff.
Yeah, another thing excuse me. Another thing that we did a lot was we have backstories for every one of these characters that you'll probably never hear, but it's super helpful for us in every aspect of design to sort of know where they come from. Well, what do they like to eat? If they're a good guy, they're a bad guy. What's their origins? Because it helps us in the design process, and it helps us just overall have a thick, rich universe, even though it's never going to be written on paper or maybe even presented. But it helps us that all these guys have weird names. It's just helpful for the process for designing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Point.
And Pärtel, you had one of the toughest challenges doing a multiplayer shooter in VR. Getting them to look right as they move is incredibly challenging. Talk to us about kind of what you do, how you use the IK to make things look right, and what that's been like.
Well, basically, the biggest challenge was, the main challenge was like getting this 3D avatar mapped to those 3 points that we have in the world, like the position of your headset and hand devices. So at first I thought like it's going to be an easy task because I already have this IK package that I've been working on for 4 or 5 years now. It's called Final IK. And I just figured like I'm gonna just hook up the component on the character and basically be done with it. But there were so many other challenges that emerged and took me by surprise. What you see here on the video, on the right side there is basically it's quite early example of the locomotion, and on the other side is basically what we have now.
Yeah, the right side used the 8-direction animation.
Yeah, it was animation based. Yeah, I was talking about the challenges. Basically, the toughest thing was that there's no single correct solution like to solving this. Like it's not like 2 + 3 = 5 or whatever. You just can't, have this one single correct answer to this problem. So, because us humans, we have so much flexibility. Like, for example, if I keep my head and hands still like this, I can still move pretty much. I can turn my body without moving my head and hands. So it was kind of finding this the most relaxed pose, which is kind of important because we are lazy people and we are not in uncomfortable positions for long periods of time. Another challenge was, of course, the locomotion and maintaining balance. And at first, as I said, we had this animation-based solution, which worked, but it was a little bit like rigid. It was quite difficult to define how far you're going to step. And sometimes you need to change where you want to step in the middle of the stepping process. So with a lot of shuffling going on. And also it was like we had this one blend tree for 8-direction strafing and the other one for turning. So if you needed to move and turn at the same time, so then those blend trees were kind of conflicting. So you would kind of step and be in this pose and then turn. So eventually I decided to go for like a procedural setup for locomotion that was like footstep based. So basically with those 3 points I get a pretty good approximation of where the center of mass is. And when I have the footsteps, then we have the center of pressure, which is halfway between the footsteps, right? So basically, from that you can get the balance vector or whatever. So if the angle is too far, then you know that the character probably appears unbalanced, and you need to take a step in that direction. And procedurally, it's a lot easier to also make turning at the same time, and just really, it's really up to you where you place that foot, and it's just much easier like that. Mm-hmm. Another challenge was like with the arms. So the arms are really difficult to solve. Like because we have a socket joint here, basically another one here. Then we have the elbow and the wrist, and there's just so much motion that an arm can do. So when I was testing my IK, I was just moving my arms like that, just trying to reach all the weird angles. And I think the most important thing with arms was the shoulder, because it looks easy, like you just rotate it towards the target, but they're like singularity points, right? So if you want to try grab something from this holster here or whatever, or here, so those hand target positions are quite close together, but the shoulder angles are quite different. So that was something
Cool.
that gave me some pain.
I just wanted to reiterate just how important it is that we actually get this right, because we always wanted, we have like a very wide set and diverse set of characters that we wanted players to be able to play as. And so we wanted them to, we didn't just want to have floating heads and hands, we wanted them to be a full body avatar. So we had this huge problem to solve. That's why we got Pärtel to just focus on this so we can focus on the gameplay and everything and the overall game. And we need it to be pretty darn good, because you may be behind a pillar and lean out, and physically you're leaning out and you see the bullets coming and you dip back into cover, but your avatar, if it wasn't working that well, may have sidestepped out, and then you get hit, and then you don't want to play the game anymore because it feels cheap. And so it's really important that we get that stuff really good.
In the end, accuracy is really the fitness function here. Like, it either works or it doesn't. It really feels bad if somebody's really behind the cover and get shot. So that's gonna, break the game. Yeah. And that's also like, I can't think of any other game where IK would be like in the main core game mechanics, like in a multiplayer game.
Yeah, making sure the player's expectation matches kind of what actually happens is incredibly important. Kind of along those same lines, reloading is a huge part of the game, and you guys have such an interesting, unique mechanic. Where did that come from? Did you try multiple versions of that? Were there other prototypes that worked or didn't?
Yeah. Well, we started first with, in fact, Kyle, our intern, started implementing some stuff. We had the guns, then we were able to shoot. And then we wanted to try flipping out the cylinder. So that was always part of our reload mechanism. So we would flip it out and then have these little virtual bullets in the air that you would place in. And that was just way too monotonous and way too slow, and it was not fun. We wanted to have a low mental load game to where you could just shoot, have fun, respawn, die, kill, and not worry about anything else. So, we dropped the little virtual bullets, and then we just had the reload mechanism. We had a cool gesture system that allowed us to just flip it out. And then the other special weapons, some of them flip down. There'll be some other weapons that have different gestures and different motions. And it just really worked out. I mean, now it's kind of just, it gets in the back of your mind. After you've played a couple of times, you're just shooting, reloading. And that shows up in the horde mode too, where your shoulders are burning by the time you're, you're at.
How hard was it to dial in how quickly they had to flip it out and flip it back? I know we went through a lot of iterations of that.
Yeah, that took a lot of iteration. And then we showed it first at GDC. The first time people play, they struggle because it's hard to describe the motion that you need to do. It's either, flip your gun in or twist your wrist, or it's just something you have to experience and get right before you know it. So we see people doing this, and there's some really weird reloading mechanisms that there's a jiggle that people do, and it just works.
It somehow works.
So after GDC, we made another pass on it, and some people would reload real fast, and there was a delay that we would wait until all the bullets were loaded in, and then it would flip back in. We now queue that return, the chamber return, so that it seems it works a lot better. I think it's pretty much solved. There will be a tutorial in the first part of the game that should.
Yeah, it's interesting because you don't really think about it, but given the cover system that you guys use, you see people reaching up and over and actually rotating their wrist naturally to shoot that way over a box or something like that. So deciding kind of when and how quickly they have to rotate the wrist to actually pop out that chamber was quite a challenge, I remember. So Was there an aha moment in coming up with that, or you're still trying to tune it, or?
What? I think, yeah, we tried different iterations, like Andrew said, and then once I mean, now it's, yeah, you're shooting.
It feels good.
And it feels good, and you don't even think about it, which is good. You don't have to think, oh, what button do I have to press, or, I mean, I think in any game you get used to that stuff, but it's good that it's actually part of like a gesture. It feels more immersive, so it works. So
Yeah.
we just kept it.
Cool. And Jeff, I mean, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say that, you know, we don't use any buttons on the touch control besides the grab and the trigger.
Yeah.
And that keeps, you're not trying to think because you can't see which buttons are sitting there. So it just kind of works out well. And I find myself in other first-person shooters now trying to
Wishing you
reload
could
like
do
that,
that.
and it doesn't work,
Right.
and then you die. So.
Now, Jeff, you've worked in a ton of different mediums. How is VR different for you when it comes to designing characters or the town or anything like that?
It's very different, actually. I find VR to be very different. So, like, when I first got hired, I met Ryan, and he put the gear on me. And the thing that, like, I still think I retain that childlike wonder when I'm in VR, because I remember I was looking around, and what struck me the most was the positional tracking, which I still think amazes me every time I go into VR. So, usually in any game, you're used to seeing, like, a building, and then you can't really see around it, like in a photo. But for VR, the fact that I could peer around with my head and see the other angle was like a big moment for me. So I took that to heart, and I use it in every design. So, like if you have a square in front of you and it's here, your perspective it goes up here, you see the top. You go down here, you see the bottom. If it's a sphere, it's the same from all angles. So I try to avoid round shapes in VR. I'm not saying everyone should. I'm just saying when I design, I try to put facets on everything, and I try to make it very detailed. So, like in the game, when the outlaw is right in front of you, I try to put as much stuff on him. And by detail, I don't mean like noise, texture noise. I mean more like geometry. So just by moving your head a little bit, you're seeing the back of a bullet on his bandolier. You're seeing the back of his arm. So that's why if you look at him, there's a lot of stuff going on with all of them that has more to do with facets. So whenever we get stuff from vendors and then I have to go over it, one of my biggest notes will always be like, add facets here, or add more shape here. All of our vendors, they do great jobs, but sometimes some things just, you know, it's very hard to translate pencil or line drawings to 3D, and sometimes it could be a little mushy. So with the mushiness, I just ask that we put facets on it. So again, every time you move your head, you see the other sides, which I think is what's amazing about VR.
And did your process change at all after you saw kind of the first versions of your characters in the game? Because I know we've done a number of designs after that.
Yeah, I saw that overall. I think everyone on the team has done such a great job that I just kept along on the same road, and kept the same level of detail. A lot of times, like as an artist myself, I'm not into detail. I like to keep things simple, so the reads are simple, so the narrative is simple. But I think all the detail looks so amazing on the Rift, or just when you're moving around, that I've kept the detail in, and I've actually started to add more, possibly to the chagrin of our deadlines or schedule. But it looks good, so we keep going.
Yeah, it does look fantastic. Sorry, did you want
I was going to say that something that was a challenge actually with designing the characters and stuff is that we didn't have the IK system in and working totally. So we were designing these characters. We didn't have, you know, the gameplay established, and we were coming up with these cool characters and just sort of exploring the art side of it. And ultimately, we found out that, you know, you drew more like really cool. Like some of the characters had like longer legs than others, or may have had.
Sorry about that.
But that we found out later was, you know, more of a problem with the IK, and we didn't know that, you know, going in. Those are some of the things we just had to learn along the way. So we kind of adjusted that, and it works really well now. But it was interesting to find those problems that way.
Yeah, they were all really cool comic book style characters, and then at GDC we had them in, and we added that high five stuff, and the hands were just massive. And Pärtel was like, you know, it'd be a lot easier if we didn't have these different proportions on the character. So we standardized our rig, and I think that really helped going forward. We can iterate on stuff a lot faster, and it's a lot easier to set up the characters.
Yeah.
And it was sort of, I had parameters when I first got here because of, you can't I tried a lot of different characters. I had enormous characters because in designing, shape is really important. I don't want everyone to look like a normal person. I think that's a little boring. So I wanted skinny people, bigger people, tall people. But then that's a nightmare for gameplay. So I had pretty much parameters to follow, so it wasn't that hard. They're all sort of skinny. It's sort of fun. It's easier to avoid bullets. You're not like this big target all the time. So,
Yeah.
Skinny is good for IK too, because the hands won't go into the body and stuff.
that's true.
Yeah, and kind of along the same lines, Pärtel, I think there were a lot of details that Jeff added to the characters that you added some solutions to, if I understand it correctly, where we actually use IK on some of the extra features on the characters. Is that right?
Yeah, it was not exactly IK, but yes, I wrote some dynamics for the noose that's hanging from the outlaw's neck, and for the cloth and all that stuff here, just to add some dynamics to them, so they wouldn't look so rigid.
And when dealing with the IK, was there one challenge in particular that was maybe the most difficult to solve, whether it's death animations or, like you were saying earlier, the way the arms and shoulders move?
The most difficult, it's difficult to say, but it was, I guess the most difficult part was bringing it all together, like, because solving one problem might give you problems elsewhere. So just trying to make it all work seamlessly, that was the tricky part.
Yeah, because there's, we have to network all the three inputs, position and rotation. Then we also network the hand gestures so that it replicates over the network. And then, we scale input based on, that's something we had problems with early on, is that Ryan's, 6'10" or whatever he is, and his arms are huge. So
right.
He'd lean forward and the IK rig would look like this. So that was an issue that we had to solve, where we scaled the input so that it all worked perfectly.
Yeah, but actually in Dead and Buried, all the people are normalized. So, if you have a tall friend like Ryan and you always have to look up to him, then in Dead and Buried, you can finally be equals.
Look him in the eye. That's great, yeah. Now, the reception of the game has been fantastic. Was there a moment where you guys realized, hey, I think we have something special on our hands here?
There's a few.
Okay. Can you walk us through a couple
Yes,
of them?
yes.
Yeah.
There's one quick one that I actually interacted with Pärtel on that I'll never forget. It was really special for me in that, so I was behind the bar, and this is still like the gray box saloon, and this is like one of the first times we did 2v2, and Pärtel was up on a balcony and shooting at me, and I ducked behind the bar, and the bullets are coming, and I hear him reloading, so I'm like, okay, it's now my chance. I stand back up, and I start shooting him again, and then the shells are coming out of the revolvers and bouncing and then rolling off the saloon bar, which is just a block, in front of me, a gray block in front of me. And then he starts shooting again, and I duck down, and it was just this moment of, wow, this is really immersive, and I had the biggest grin on my face. I don't think I could see anymore in the headset because I was smiling so big. And I stood up and I killed him. And then we kept hearing from Ruben. He's like, when can I play? I hear you guys have multiplayer running, let me play. And this is like 9 o'clock at night. This is like a couple weeks, I think, before GDC. And we're like, we're finally ready to play, so let's go. And so Andrew and I were in one room, and Ruben and someone else, I think it may have been Mike actually, and they were in the other part of the office. And we play a match, and I don't remember if we had VoIP in there or not, so I'm not sure. I didn't know if he liked it or not. So we put the headset down, go out, and then we hear him running over to us. I'm like, either he's going to be pissed, he's mad at us, he doesn't like what he's playing, or he's really excited. He came over and he's like, that was awesome. Check it out, I ripped my pants. And he split his pants right in the middle. I know he's told that story to some of the press, so I don't think he should be too mad at me for saying that. But I think that was a good sign that he had a lot of fun, and he always wanted to play, even though he ripped his pants. So it was good. Cool.
All right, I want to kind of jump into some more traditional post-mortem-y questions, even though, again, we haven't finished the game. But kind of for all of you guys in your own disciplines, what would you say has gone right so far about this project?
Start.
Well, hiring Pärtel here to do the IK
Yeah.
was awesome. It allowed us to focus on gameplay and doing some other stuff. Also, we got Gunfire Games to help us out with Horde mode, which you guys should go play. It's awesome. And they're doing a lot of assets and everything so that we can make the game a full game.
Right.
And I think that's,
Yeah.
What else was there?
Well, one thing I'll add is I'm actually really excited for everyone to see the full scope of the game, because this has been a very small team, and so adding Gunfire has allowed us to build it out to what really feels like a legitimate AAA multiplayer game. And there are even some single-player modes as well.
Yep. Actually, I do remember something else that went really well. It was actually pretty cool, and just in VR and multiplayer and social all go hand in hand together. We've really realized that. And when we first hooked up the 2v2, we had we flew in Pärtel and Fabio, our contract artist, and the four of us were in the room, and we would play match after match and have a blast. And we're like, I think we have something here. We're really excited about it. We want to keep playing it. But I wonder what happens when we all go back, because we're all distributed. Like the team is kind of spread out across the world, really. And Pärtel lives in Estonia, Dallas here, and Fabio's in Brazil. So we jumped back into a global game, and I was personally worried that maybe this would fall apart, when we actually do.
Right.
And it would be, you'd feel alone or something like that. And it's actually the complete opposite. It felt the same as though we were in the same room together. And I think that's just a combination of the magic of multiplayer and social and VR and the VoIP and just being able to talk like we do, like we're in the same room, and having the third-person avatars react so well and realistically. That was really a relief, really.
Yeah, one of my favorite moments whenever I watch someone play is when they load into that kind of table that describes how you play. The first time they do a high five is just the greatest moment. They're like, oh my gosh, it actually works.
Yeah, everyone has a good time with that, which is cool. And gestures and thumbs up and stuff like that.
Right.
And
Yeah. All right, Jeff, what went well for you?
I think I'd almost say the same thing. Having a distributed team all over the world and have only 5 or 6 or 7 guys, I think it's really amazing that it all comes together. I think it was really helpful that there's a hierarchy in place. It's not like all of us are just doing whatever we want, because then you can't get stuff done. So we'll send in our stuff from some Gunfire, from myself or whatever. These guys will look it over, and they'll make sure everything works. And I think what I like the most out of this experience, and I've worked in animation, video games, comics, all these things, but what I really like is it feels like a real team, and we're getting a lot of stuff done at a fast pace, and I'm very happy with the outcome. A lot of times when things are rushed, we're getting things in and they look all crazy and messed up, and it's just not a fun work atmosphere when that happens. So with this, I thought it was awesome. I think it was smooth. I mean, it was hard working, but it was smooth, and the outcome's turning out pretty nice.
Well, it's difficult to say, but I think we just kind of found a fun factor, usually if you make a game, you don't really want to play it because you know what's going to happen. But with Dead and Buried, we just can't get enough. When we're doing the demos, we just spend the whole day watching other people play, and by the end of the day, you're really like, okay, I want to play now. Can't watch this anymore.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, I won't ask what went wrong necessarily, but if you could go back in time or on your next project, what have you learned that you would maybe do differently?
what went wrong? What did we say about that?
The death cam.
There's a few little things that we just kind of experimented with. We had like a death cam that would kind of break immersion. We noticed that initially we had it so that when you died, the camera would kind of pull back and you see the death, which was pretty cool to see, but it was really like this big disconnect, and it was kind of jarring to the overall flow of the game. So we just made it simple, and just you die and you're just in place, and you can still actually see your body, which is kind of crazy. And your hat would flow down in front of you, and then you have skeleton hands, and then you quickly respawn and get back in the game. So, any other things? Surely something else went wrong.
Yeah. We're not done yet. There's still plenty of time. Yeah.
The character proportions.
Yeah.
Those were
Yeah.
wrong. We had to fix that, and that took a little bit of work to send everything back through the pipeline again. And then there's just a lot of ideas that we won't get to.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of sad to throw some of those out. But so that's going forward. We'll probably have some stuff that we want to get into DLC or the next game or whatever. So.
But it's all like alien territory, so we just keep inventing stuff. So it's normal that we spend a lot of time to just remaking things.
Yeah, the building the character prefabs and everything is a time-consuming process that has to go through Fabio to verify that the art's right that we get from the outsourcers, and then it goes to Pärtel to set up the IK, the colliders, and all that. So it's a very, if we could streamline that, we're trying to do that. If we could streamline that, it'd be a lot better.
Yeah.
One thing that did go right is that this game, we took our the system that we use for events and setting up gameplay and UI, and we made it more of a visual, flow charty thing.
Yeah.
And we weren't usually a fan of doing that, but it allowed us to visually debug everything that, the whole flow of the game from the menus, and there's a lot that goes on, setting up a multiplayer game. And that allowed us to just watch the flow as it's going, and then if an error happened, it was really easy to see, and each one of those little code modules could be easily debugged and optimized. So that worked out really well for us.
Which is really important when we have a small team. We're trying to iterate quickly. And something else, I mentioned it earlier, but just we were trying to make one particular type of game, and then we're also doing these concepts for the game, and then the game kind of changed. And that's game development. I mean, you just kind of roll with the punches and kind of iterate through and prototype. And because VR is still definitely new and early, so we learned what kind of worked along the way, and we've had to kind of adjust with that. And I think being a small team and we're tight and we understand each other's skill levels, that we're able to do those things. It's much harder to kind of pivot and stuff when you're a larger team. So we kind of use that to our advantage as well.
And Jeff, you kind of talked about it a little bit, but anything else that you learned through the process that you might take into your next VR game?
I think the main stuff, getting back to what was difficult, was I think that we're making a lot of, it's so early in VR, so I think we're making a lot of assumptions as we're going. And I think all the stuff that we learned from that, I think, is what I would take to the next game.
Yeah, makes sense. Cool. I want to take questions from the audience in just a minute, so if you have a question, go ahead and line up at the microphone. But the other thing I wanted to ask is, what are you most proud of in the game? Or is there one particular thing that you're really going to remember?
Jason ripping his pants.
Yeah.
No, but really, I think the first time we showed the game at GDC, the multiplayer, and the response from that, and seeing people naturally, when they get into the game, they duck down. We didn't. I've had one person, I gave a demo, and they said, "How do I crouch? What button?" I'm like, "You actually have to get down, physically." And then they had a blast after that, so that's good. But that was, I'll never forget that in my career, just seeing the response from that. And I feel like we were creating something kind of unique and new. And as Pärtel said earlier, we want to play it every day. So I think that's a good sign. I haven't worked on a game where I want to play it every day. So yeah. Anything else?
Stole all mine.
All the same things, yeah.
Well, I think for me, it's sort of almost the same thing where we'd be testing the game, and I'd be thinking, my God, this is so much fun. I've never had this much fun before. But then you sometimes you don't know if anyone else is going to think it's fun.
Yeah.
So that seeing, and then going to whatever it was, GDC or whatever event, and then seeing people getting crazy was I think a huge thing for me. Yeah. I also thought it was really cool where I had never played in the saloon, the shootout yet, and I saw you guys, and there's like tons of people, and they're like, get in there, and I'm like, I don't want to go up there and just like put this headset on while there's all these people in back of me, but I did it, and then because I was just scared people were watching or whatever. And then I have the thing on. Next thing you know, I'm like diving around and I'm acting crazy like there's no one in the room. And I think that's a good, it breaks social barriers to a degree. Something you don't think you do, then you forget about whatever fears you had, which I thought was pretty big too.
I just have the same answer, so nothing really to add.
The one thing I will add is it's really cool for me to see all the people in our office who get to see a lot of different content. I think Dead and Buried is still probably the most played game that we have today, which is really saying something. So, All right, why don't we take a couple of questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, guys, so much. It's really great to see you. Can't wait to put some hours in on it. I'm Richard Kidd. I'm with Perilous Orbit. We make Pool Nation VR, and we're coming out for touch on launch. So I just wanted to ask a little bit about networking and what you guys are doing. Obviously, you're making a fast-paced game, and as we put more sort of quicker things in there, and sort of what you guys are doing for your networking, what kind of custom work you might have had to do to preemptive stuff.
For networking, Dead and Buried's a Unity-based game, so we went with the Photon networking cloud stuff. It makes connecting, to the other players very easy. One benefit that we have of a VR game where you're more or less stationary is that we don't have to do any crazy prediction for players zipping across the level. So the main optimization is that the client, or the damage done when you're shooting, it's more client authoritative.
Right.
So that minimizes a lot of stuff. And we do have a constant data flow for all the positions of the hands and head. But other than that, we just try to optimize, send as little data as possible, and and you got to keep a 90 hertz frame rate too. So that's it's a lot going on.
But you didn't have to do a whole lot of custom, like you said, optimize just how much data, just keep the data low, and
no, it's we're lucky because it's 4 players. Well, we do have another mode that has a few more players, but for the most part, we haven't had to dig in and say, we're going to have to rewrite this stuff. So
cool. Thanks very much.
Hey there, Brian from Within. So I'm just a little bit curious about your approach for remapping the input. And so for people at different scales and broader shoulders, is there like a moment where you calibrate, or how are you guys approaching that?
Well, basically, we had a lot of ideas for that, like what you said, calibration. And in the end, we just decided to ignore the problem. Because it kind of worked. And there are some problems, like people have longer arms, then the IK is not going to look really good because, the avatar's arm is really stretched out and not really reaching, for example, the door handles. But I'm planning to work on that, so we have some time and maybe do some stretching or whatever.
But you're normalizing the character's heights anyway.
Yes.
yeah, we did a lot of iteration on that. I mean, we even have a thing in one of the demos where the Undertaker would fly out with a tape measure and measure you for your coffin, and so it was a part of the game that was still immersive, and it wasn't a special little scene where you had to press some buttons. So yeah,
The different player heights, basically that only matters when you go down and try to reach something from the ground. That's when the character height matters, but when you're just standing up or crouching, then doesn't really matter.
Thank you.
we thought it would be a lot harder problem than it ended up being. It just worked.
Yeah.
Hi. Sorry, I'm a little short. My name is Frances, and I am a 3D artist. So I was just curious, when it came to the environments, the characters, or props, what kind of poly count were you trying to aim towards? And what exactly was what did you need to optimize most in terms of art, like the textures, bump maps, and so on?
Sure. For the environments, I mean, you are moving around, but we know exactly where you're going to be. Like, we know that these 8 or 12 spawn points are, players will be right up near that. So we would focus and put more high detail there. The back of the saloon or distant mesas and stuff would be low poly. They're just background. We have the train heist level. In the demo area, it has the level going by. We could have made that during the day, but we chose to make it set it at night, pull the fog in. It's a trick. Most people don't even look out there, and it probably does help with simulator sickness as well. Poly count wise, we don't go over. We try and keep it pretty optimized. I don't really have a number because there's a lot of other stuff going on that we're usually not held back by that.
Okay.
It's more stylized. So.
And stylized as well, and we use the lighting to kind of help pop things and kind of hide other things. That's about it.
Character poly count?
15,000? 14?
10, 15, and there's LEDs.
Yeah. And then we have LEDs as well and stuff like that. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Hi, just want to say great job on the characters system and the IK stuff in particular. Really, really impressive. We're actually dealing with some things like that in a project of our own. And I had a question a bit more about the footstep system that you ended up settling on, because procedurally is the way you'd want to go, as you say, all these inputs coming together. When you're determining what the footsteps are, how would you do that? Are you sort of procedurally guessing where the next footsteps are going to be, and then you reevaluate, or what's the?
So once I calculate the center of balance vector, right? So basically, you want to take a footstep roughly in that direction. It doesn't need to be like super weird high-tech physics, behind that. Just take a step in that direction, and you're better off than you were before. So also, it's good to use like velocity-based prediction, because just the position of your head is not really enough. Because when we start stepping left or right, we don't just fall over and then in the last minute take a step. That's not really healthy. But that's why it's important to use the velocity of the head.
Do you simulate the center of mass at the pivot, or do you also have a chest model? For me, I want to know where this mass is, because it affects, of course, the arms and the head and everything.
I basically try to keep the calculations as low as possible. So basically, I use the centroid of the 3 points, and it's as easy as that.
Great.
Hi, I thought I'd seen some dynamic lighting. I actually originally thought that this was built in Unreal Engine. I was like, oh, deferred renderer, that makes sense. But you mentioned Unity, which I was a little surprised by. It looks fantastic. I'm guessing this is forward rendered. Are there dynamic lights, and did you have to do any tricks with the lighting?
No, we don't have any.
I think in the waiting, if I remember, when you're waiting for other players to connect, there's some.
I think
little spirit.
there are, but we're not casting any shadows. So they illuminate as they get you look at the player and we have just like a spotlight turn on them. But that's about as far as we go. We used to have like in the train heist, the night level, like the certain parts of the outside terrain would also have light posts, and the light would come in and it looked awesome. But then it just ran it didn't run that well. So it was an easy thing to cut. But yeah, we bake in all of our lighting, use light probes, kind of take more of the stylized approach, just so it runs fast.
Are you using blob shadows or anything like that?
Nope.
For the players?
No.
No.
Mm-mm.
That's great. Cool. Looks great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So was there one thing in terms of performance of the game that was a particular challenge to solve, whether it's poly count, networking, or anything like that?
I forgot to mention, actually, to the woman's question, I was going to mention overdraw is a big issue. Yeah, I think in a lot of VR games and stuff, we try and limit that. And again, we know where the players are going to pretty much be standing, which we use to our advantage. So we don't need to have, like if there's like a dust cloud or something like that, we don't need it rendered from all sides. We don't need it, 100 sheets stacked on top of each other. We'll just do like 3 or something like that, and kind of use the overdraw viewer in Unity to kind of help us with that. That really helps. Anything else?
Yeah, I was going to say we do have mobile game backgrounds, so we're pretty well informed about how to optimize for that, and we kind of carry that into this, running at 90 hertz, baked lights, and no dynamic stuff. So it helps keep it fast, and we'll dump everything in, all the fancy lights and alpha and all that, and then there's a pass at the end which probably scared the QA people when we were not at frame rate, but we do a pass at the end that just chops it all out and it pulls it back, and usually we're there.
Now, there was a good question about networking. Do you think working with a distributed team actually helped you guys optimize for networking and make sure you had that up and running early?
Yeah, I think so, because one of the things that Well, it's always in the back of your head, like, oh my God, how is this going to run? When I'm playing across the world to Estonia, but with the client authoritative damage and the way that everything worked, we'd have games, with him in Menlo Park, Dallas, Estonia, and Brazil, and we really, there may have been a ping lag that we didn't really notice in the VoIP, but it played really great. So, yeah.
Okay, and we still have a little ways to go to finish the game. Is there anything in particular that you're looking forward to, actually getting in front of people, finishing, or anything that's a particular challenge coming up?
Yeah, we have a whole list of stuff that we want to address right after the demos. It'll be nice not working on demos, and then we can go heads down and finish the rest of the game. So we'll have QA to work with and, more content to polish.
Yeah, we're really excited to actually bring 2 new game modes to OC3 this year. We have the Train Heist, which is a robbery game mode. So it's kind of like the shootout. Hope some of you got to play that, but basically whoever wins advances forward, and fallback is kind of a tug of war. And then we have the Horde mode, which is mainly designed by Gunfire Games. And it's basically just a cooperative game mode, and waves of monsters, and there's a boss at each level. So there's multiple levels across the different game modes. It's definitely a multiplayer-focused title. I'm excited to see people play all of those, and I think we've done a decent job with the Oculus platform stuff too. We've made it super easy to play with your friends. You can easily, Andrew starts a game, I can quickly join his game, and then continue to play with him as well. And we can switch modes, and we try and make it super easy to play with people because we find that that's more fun. So.
Right. Now, we learn something every time we show the game to the public. Have you watched a bunch of people play these 2 new modes for the first time? Have you learned anything particular you're going to take back and maybe adjust, edit?
I was happy to see that most people figured out how to open the doors on the train. It's a new mechanic. No one's ever done that in a game, so most people understood that. I do think we have to really, as Andrew mentioned, the tutorial at the beginning of the game with reloading, we have to make that very clear. So I think we'll design we have some really good ideas on that, I think. Not just say, hey, flip your gun in and flip it out. It's got to be a better tutorial because that's so important. We see that over and over and over again. What's good is that once they do it enough, they understand how to do it, and it becomes second nature.
Yeah, we definitely need a tutorial for the safe. We did see people crack it, but it's.
Did anyone open it during the?
Yeah, somebody opened
okay.
it, but
right.
at least when I was watching. But just with the bullets flying over and everything else, people get there and they're. I think after you play it, it's easy to do, but that's something we'll need to have a tutorial for. Horde mode, we saw that not a lot of people progress past the first boss encounter, so. It's a fine balance of tweaking that to make sure that it's fun for, expert players and new people alike. So there'll be some balancing issues that we'll take into account. Anything else?
Yeah, that's not a bad list considering how much we have to do. And what would you say was your favorite thing to actually work on? In terms of the aspects of the game? Was it the shooting, the frantic nature of it, even some of the other modes? We haven't talked about Crow Canyon very much, but the kind of target shooting, to me, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice contrast to the frantic, crazy shootouts and stuff like that. So we do have just like a very basic shooting gallery. You go for the high score. That's kind of nice and relaxing. My favorite thing to work on are the levels for, I have to do a lot of the UI and hookup of gameplay and all that stuff, but when I finally get to just sit down and
make a level,
build a map, I have, that's what I've done my whole career, is building first-person shooter levels and stuff like that. So I just built a really cool level that I'm excited to play when we get back. So, so that's always nice to be able to jump back in. We're really happy with the game modes and stuff like that, and you get to share those experiences with other people because it is a multiplayer game, a social game by nature. So you get to share that with the other teammates and eventually everyone else. So
it was a lot of fun setting up the different game modes because we have, the quick draw has made it back in, so there will be a last man standing quick draw mode. But I think my favorite's getting Jeff's weapon concepts, and then seeing, we usually make a block out weapon first. And then I can quickly integrate that, and then getting the final art in, and then being the first to shoot the weapons and knowing exactly how they work is
Yeah,
always
that was going to be my next question is, do you have a preference between doing characters, environments, weapons?
No.
Okay.
I don't have a preference. I enjoy all of it. The hardest thing for me, I think, and the most rewarding is to create such a diverse world, diverse characters and diverse guns, but still have them all fit. And I think it's important that games are cohesive. Like as you go through it, that you shouldn't be taken out by something that doesn't belong. I think the reason this has worked out so well is because there was, I think, one thing I did that Ryan was like, maybe that's a little strange, which I didn't, which I've been trying to vet myself. I did this one pistol, and he was like, yeah, it looks good. And I go, I'm not done yet. When you cock it, the chamber comes out, and there's a little alien sitting inside in a pod. He's like, no, that doesn't work. So that was the only thing that I think that they didn't like. But just like Andrew was saying, he enjoys seeing the designs come in. Honestly, every time I'm drawing, my goal is like I don't want to produce any crap. So I will draw, I'll silhouette, I'll black it out. I don't want to turn it over unless these guys will like it or everyone will like it. So it's important to me that
all artists are like that.
Yeah. Most. Yeah, that was just important to create something that's unique. So every time you see it, it means something, and it makes the game more special. You know, because these things it's like a horde mode. It's a shootout. It's sort of short, and you don't have a ton of time to just take stuff in. First of all, you're being shot at like crazy, so everything has to be like a quick initial read and a strong read, silhouette read. So.
I enjoy most when I get to do stuff that hasn't been done before. Like that's the most interesting part, just inventing stuff, and also like doing physics, all kinds of physics stuff. That's like a vacation for me. So.
All right, and do you guys have a favorite weapon in the game today?
I do, but nobody's seen it yet.
Okay, good tease.
I like the shotgun we have, but what I like most is having two of them.
Yeah, I love the tri-shot because that was basically designed to. It's more or less our version of the railgun, and I'm a huge Quake player, and that was my weapon of choice. So
You like the one-shot kill.
So it's just I just wait for someone to stick their head out and then move on to the next one. So.
Well, there's a weapon that isn't out. There's a weapon that isn't out yet, but it's like a rib cage that has a glowing gem in it that we're gonna have animate.
Not an alien.
Not an alien. I never said alien again after that one day. But yeah, so I haven't seen it animate yet, so I'm looking forward to seeing it in the game too.
Yeah, that was actually interesting. Each base character has like their own. So when you pick your base character, which has different variations and styles and attire, they also have their own base six shooter. And that was interesting to try and come up with. I mean, there's only so many ways you can make a 6-shooter, and so that was actually kind of fun to work with Jeff on how do we make these crazy. So one of them is made out of bone and stone, and it's wrapped with leather and stuff.
Ryan makes a great point. So all of our base characters, they're not in the game yet, but there's, how many are there? 6? I don't remember. But each one has a pistol, but we don't want to have different things going on, and we don't want different gameplay. Yeah. So it's basically the same 6-shooter. It could shoot different colored stuff or whatever. But we had to make each one look different, so you'd want to try it. But it couldn't have a different gameplay, because then it would be balancing different things all the time. So we hope you guys like it. I mean, they're all pretty different looking.
Yeah, question.
Yes, my name's Wayman. I'm an independent game developer. And so I always wondered from a professional point of view or perspective, when you developed the levels, did you choose to go with a modular style where you actually batched the draw calls, or did you prefer the attached geometry approach? And which one, performance-wise, works best?
We typically try and do a lot of props. It gives us more control. You know, the saloon is built out of, the saloon bar, then you have pillars, then you have beams of wood that we can move around. Helps for gameplay. You know, an evolving game like this where we didn't know what the gameplay was, and then we did, and then it's like we need to move cover all the time and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, we can batch a lot of that same materials or start grouping materials, batch in smart ways. But yeah, it seems we've done both in the past. I've built games where we build everything in a modeling package and everything, and this gives us more freedom and more control.
Okay. Efficiency-wise, though, which one did you find worked better, just for performance?
Yeah, I was going to mention that. At some point, there's a threshold in Unity where if you have too many game objects, then the renderer thread is spinning through all those objects trying to call them and see if they're in view. So, for instance, like in the terrain heist scene with the, there's a lot of prefabs that are in the terrain that's scrolling by, and we bake those down into, as minimal amount of meshes as possible with an atlas. And then you can get rid of all those game objects there. So that really helps performance. Gotcha. So it's really kind of, you learn which areas need that kind of thing, and then, you can combine those meshes. Exactly.
Gotcha.
And the modular stuff just works really well with a small team, and just building more content, more levels and stuff like that. We can take a wall prefab and just swap the texture, and now we have a hotel instead of a saloon. Visual style. So.
Gotcha. Can I ask another question?
Of course.
Okay. All right. Last one. So do you actually end up recycling the assets for multiple levels?
Absolutely.
A lot?
Yep.
Okay.
Totally.
That should be it.
Cool.
All right, thank you. It looks like we're out of time, so I want to thank you guys for doing this, for sharing your experiences. Please thank our panelists today. Let them hear it from you guys.